Welcome back, guys. We have Christi Johnson on the podcast today, who is another podcaster and someone who did what I've had to do in the last few months. If you've been following me from the beginning, you know that there were a few weeks where there were no episodes, and a bunch of you reached out and were like, what the hell's going on? I had a little bit of a mental health crisis, so that's what we're going to chit chat about today. Not my mental health crises, but hers. So please welcome Christi on the pod today. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that life finally got it all together, because it was not for a minute for the both of us. So let's just start off lightly. The Dream Biz podcast, that is your podcast. What is it about?
Yeah, so the Dream Biz podcast is where I interview people about their business dreams and life dreams and how they actually take steps to achieve their dreams and turn it into reality. Because it's one thing to think, oh my goodness, I really want to do this, but it's another thing to actually take steps towards your dreams and make it happen. So the podcast has gone through a little bit of a shift, which I'm sure we'll talk about because of my mental health crisis. Before I started doing the series of interviewing people about their dreams, it was really just a place to get business tips for creative and neurodivergent entrepreneurs. And that's something that I do plan to continue to bring in. I also love hearing tips that are really compassionate towards your mental health needs and things that are not just your standard, oh, do this framework that I did and you'll make $20,000 in 3 days, because those things don't always work for everyone. So I alternate between interviewing people about their dreams, and then sometimes I do solo episodes where I come on and talk about how to grow your business within your capacity and also being kind to yourself and your mental health needs.
I think that's the biggest thing, is it's so hard as entrepreneurs and creatives to not be so hard on ourselves, because we're seeing, especially post-COVID, a huge mental health crisis around the world. It's not even just in the US, it's globally. And a lot of us are none of us are going to be the same after that. And I think the way that we're approaching things and the way that our mentalities around things are a lot different. And unfortunately, the model did not go with the new permanent change and all of that. So it is a struggle. It is an absolute struggle. And as a neurodivergent 34-year-old woman myself, that secondary burnout, man, hit me like a freaking freight train. And that's why there was almost 2 months of no episodes. It was just, it was not happening.
That's happened to me too. And it was honestly shocking for me when it happened, because I've always been such a high achieving person, and I've always been the kind of person who can really get my stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
I've historically never had trouble getting things done. So that's why I was so confused when at 30 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And it really did, my mental health did start to spiral in 2020. And that's when I started to have these symptoms of anxiety that I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? And I remember asking my therapist a couple of years ago, is it just that I'm a different person now? Did something break me that made me this anxious and where I can't function now? And she was like, no, it's probably because you were masking your whole life. And usually, especially in women, when you have ADHD, it can oftentimes show up as anxiety, because that's more of a socially acceptable way for a woman to be. It's acceptable for her to be anxious, but if she is distracted or not disciplined or whatever, that's not allowed. And so it was really revolutionary for me to learn this information about my brain. And then it took me such a long time to kind of learn the lesson that I needed to learn, which is to be compassionate with myself, to accept that I have mental health challenges and set up my business in a way that supports those mental health challenges. Because what happened was I ended up having burnout at 31 years old, and I had to take months off of my business and my podcast because I was still trying to operate from a place of the old version of me who was still masking and not really taking my mental health into consideration. And it ended up with me crashing and burning. So I have been there, and it is not a place that anybody wants to be.
No, no, it's not. It was definitely a struggle where I had to literally put a deadline and make a story that was like, hey, they're coming out this day, because I was like, I have to hold myself to it. Because
Yeah.
and like people don't talk about secondary burnout. Like once you're out of survival mode, like in the entire 2025, I was in a massive like limbo survival mode, all of that, because um my my divorce was final, but then like I didn't know where my ex-husband was landing. I didn't know where I was landing. We were still living in the house. Like there was so much going on, and there was so much limbo of we were trying to get the house sold, and we were trying to do this, and we were trying to do this, and trying to find an affordable apartment was like an absolute nightmare. So like once I moved and settled, and obviously I'm in the new place now, but like once all of that was no longer a factor, and I was like, okay, I can like get back into my routine. I can do this. I can do that. No, no, you can't. No, it's almost like your body's like, okay, now we can like let go and continue to keep letting go. Like we're just not going to do anything. We're going to lay in bed and eat our feelings and like, and I'm just like, I got things to do. I got to get back into a routine. And now I'm like back and like all is mostly well, but it took months.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because it's like you mentioned, you get into survival mode and you're just trying to survive, right?
Mhm.
And so you kind of are neglecting your self-care needs, and then eventually get to the point where your body's just like, okay, the crisis is over. Now I'm really going to force you to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And like, I remember feeling like I'm not a functioning person. Like I couldn't even get out of bed some days.
Yeah.
Like I literally had a checklist on my notes app, which was like, things to do today. And it was get out of bed, brush your teeth, make your bed, and put on clothes. Like those are the kind of things that I had to put on my list because I was just not able to function
Yeah.
after my burnout crisis. So
And
I've been there.
I think being neurodivergent, like people don't understand. They're like, what do you mean? Like you're struggling to like brush your teeth and like take a shower. It's like, do you not understand that like I got up long enough to let my dog out? Like it's not like it's not great. So can you walk me through what your journey with that mental health crisis looked like, especially because of your diagnosis? And we'll kind of dive into that and what the difference between that and traditional mania is and all of that. But like let's just start kind of from the beginning. Like where did we fall off the cliff?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to take you back to 2023. I was building my business. I had became an online business manager in 2021, somewhere around there. And I was growing my business. And then 2023 is when I started to get really, really serious about my growth in terms of finances and sales. I was like, I'm ready to skyrocket my sales. I want to hit those 10K months like consistently. I don't want to just be surviving. So I'm going to do whatever it takes. So I hired a coach that was really focused on results and sales. And as I was working with this coach, I started to just build my team more and more and more. And so I was bringing in more clients for online business management. And then as I was bringing in those clients, I also had the opportunity to bring on my brother-in-law as a full-time team member with me. He was in a place where he was in a really terrible job, and he was not thriving, and I really wanted to be able to support him and his dreams, because that has always been one of my goals, is supporting other people's dreams, especially my family and those people closest to me. So I brought in my brother-in-law to help me, and his skills are website development and coding. And also I was using him as as an assistant. So he was helping me with a lot of my things for my clients that involved the back end of their websites and their email funnels and WordPress plugins and all those things that like I don't really want to deal with as a creative person, but he had the skills. And then I was also giving him some assistant tasks. So we were growing and growing, and I was continuing to bring in clients. And then it got to the point where I was so busy, I was neglecting my needs because I didn't think that I needed to take time for myself, because I was still operating under the impression that like I'm a high achiever. I can do all these things without having to worry about it. But what was happening was my anxiety was getting really, really high. So I started getting on medication to manage my ADHD and my anxiety. So I was taking Zoloft, and that was really helping me with my anxiety. And then once I got diagnosed with ADHD and was really just having trouble with task management, like especially in terms of a online business manager, like I'm not only managing my clients, now I'm also managing this team. I had eventually grown at the beginning of 2024, I had grown my team to have 4 team members. So it wasn't just my brother-in-law, it was me and my brother-in-law and then 3 other people as well. So I was just really struggling. So I started exploring medication and I got on Adderall. And oh my gosh, it was incredible at first. I was
That is the thing. Like, it's always incredible at first, because I had the same experience. It was absolutely wonderful. And now every time I try to get back on ADHD medications, it is like anxiety everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was great at first because I was super creative. I was able to like, I described it as my brain had all these fires inside of them. And whereas they used to just be burning all the time, all at once as one big fire, and I couldn't really distinguish between what was important and what was not important. It was like now all of a sudden there was like a fireman in my brain that was telling me, oh, these ones are just smoldering. So you're good. You don't need to worry about that. These ones, these are the ones that you really need to worry about. So I felt like I was really able to think through my thoughts a little bit better and kind of manage them. But then what happened was I started not sleeping. And that is when I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually experiencing symptoms of hypomania. And hypomania is associated with bipolar 2 disorder. I was not officially diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder because I haven't had this happen since the beginning of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
But it is associated with bipolar 2, and it's possible that I do have it. And one of the things that my therapist has told me is like, if you have anxiety and you have ADHD and you have bipolar disorder, then sometimes when you treat the anxiety, it can trigger the bipolar. Or if you treat the bipolar, it can make the anxiety symptoms worse or the ADHD symptoms worse. So it's kind of like this weird mix where you have to be really careful with your meds.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really know that.
Right.
So I was experiencing hypomania, which is periods of where you don't need as much sleep, so you sleep less.
Mm-hmm.
You also have an inflated sense of self-importance, so you think you're better at things than you actually are. You also have a lot of creative ideas and a lot of creative energy, and you also have you're a little bit more spontaneous and wanting to take risks, and also that comes with spending money. Now, most people may be familiar with mania, which is associated with bipolar 1 disorder. And that's where you can sometimes not even remember what has happened to you during a manic episode. Like you might spend $30,000 on a boat because you think that you are going to sail around the world because you have the skills to do that when you've never sailed before and you don't know the first thing about sailing. But it's like, your mind just gets this way. So hypomania is not quite to the level where you're not super in control, but it's still definitely not where you want to be.
Right.
So I was experiencing these symptoms. I didn't know it yet, and I wasn't taking the steps to care for myself. What I should have done in hindsight is always 20.
Of course.
Yeah, is paused and taken the time to put some boundaries in my schedule so that I could care for myself. But I just didn't really know what was happening. And also I was still growing my business and having all this growth financially. And eventually at the beginning of 2024, my body just kind of like shut down. So I got sick with a cold, and then that turned into the flu, and then that turned into COVID-19. And I had about 3 months where I was only well for like 2 weeks maybe. And so I was just sick. My body was not cooperating. My immune system was low. And then I ended up with a full-on hypomanic episode twice, where I had 7 full days, one in February and one in March, where I only slept about an hour a night.
My gosh.
And the worst one was in March, where I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't able to complete work for my clients. I actually went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I was texting people that I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. I was sending weird messages in the middle of the night, and it got to the point where like my best friend is calling my parents and saying, "Hey, what's wrong with Christy? Like, is she okay?
Right.
I don't think she's okay. We need to like have an intervention." And that's when I realized like, "Oh, this is serious and I need to take this seriously." So after that happened, I actually had a nervous system breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like I had this break where once I realized the severity of it, because my best friend's calling my parents and my husband, my mom called me, my dad called me, my sister called me like in the same day. They're like, "Christy, are you okay?" And it was like I had this light bulb moment of like, "Oh, I'm not well." And once I had that moment of I'm not well, it was like my body just kind of like broke. So I had a nervous breakdown and I couldn't even like get out of bed. I couldn't even function. So I had to literally cancel clients' contracts. I had to refund people for work that was in progress that I wasn't going to be able to complete. And I had to let go of all 4 of my team members because I wasn't able to manage the business and I hadn't gotten my team members into a place where they could manage the business without me. We weren't at that point yet. So I had to put a full stop to it. And it took me months to get well, which we can talk about the recovery process if you want to, but that's kind of what happened and where I ended up and how it was super devastating for my business. Like I had to stop everything.
Yeah, no, we definitely need to talk about the recovery because you can't, obviously you're no longer there. So we definitely need to be like, okay, well, how did you get better per se? Severe air quotes. So how did you rebuild from that rock bottom?
So the first thing that I did obviously was working with my therapist because she was with me throughout the whole thing. And I think that it was very important that I just removed responsibilities from my plate. So I had to take those steps to cancel my contracts. And then I had to ask for help. So I had to ask for help from my husband to help me with things that historically I was doing because I needed my sole focus to be able to get better. And I was working with a coach at the time because I just knew that I needed help. And I actually leaned into some alternative forms of healing. So I got with a coach who does tarot readings
Love it.
and she also does yoga. She does yin yoga and then she does coaching. So she's an embodiment coach and she's also a business owner. So I worked with her for a period of 3 weeks. 3 months, sorry. We would get together. We would do yoga every single Monday. Once a month, we would have a tarot reading. And then she would also be coaching me every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I worked with her, I worked with another coach who does human design. And she's a business coach. And so at that point, this was probably 3 months. This was 3 months into my recovery because I did 3 months with the coach, the embodiment coach. And at that point, my goal was just to regulate my nervous system and to get well. So after 3 months, then I really wanted to start to grow my business again because I was like, I've been down for the count for 3 months. It's time for me to get moving on my business. So that's when I hired a business coach and she does human design and also coaching. And her whole philosophy is she wants your work to feel more like play. And my therapist is also big into creative play. So sometimes we will go into a session and do art that is not very good because I'm not an artist. But
Same.
it's wild how much your brain can heal when you are practicing creativity. So I leaned into creativity with her. I got my business coach and I kept going into the sessions with my business coach saying, okay, we need to strategize. Like, let's strategize. How am I going to make money? But she kept saying, Christy, I don't think you're ready for that yet. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, come on. Like, I lost a lot of money. I need to get the money back. And she gave me homework like, I want you to watch TikTok all day and not feel guilty about it. I want you to rest and not feel guilty about it and not try to strategize about your business. And so I had to do what I didn't want to do, which was rest and recover and tap into my hobbies like crocheting, playing music, making art. Like I used to be really big into music and crocheting when I was a teen, but I had neglected those things in favor of productivity because I was like, if I'm not productive, it's not valuable. So I wasn't doing anything for myself. So her homework was literally just be a human and do your hobbies.
Yeah.
And it was like, it took me so long to learn that lesson because I kept trying to strategize with her. And then she'd be like, you're coming at this from a place of fear, not like, oh, this is what I meant to do. And I'm so excited about this. It was always like, I need to make this amount of money. Here's a way to do it. So she really helped me to get outside of myself and just focus on being a human and getting back to what made me me. Because I wasn't able to think about that from that place of fear. And when my nervous system was in like that mode of like survival, I was like, I got to get out of this. Like she really helped me to get into that so much. So it wasn't until I was able to step away and be creative and play and not worry about strategizing about my business till then I was finally able to come up with ideas that were actually aligned with who I am and more about this amazing energetic thing that I wanted to put out into the world rather than I need to make $100,000 and here's how I have to do it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes complete and total sense. I think like a lot of us fell victim to the hustle culture where if you weren't eat, sleeping, and breathing your business, it was not going to be successful. It was not going to go anywhere. And you were going to be an utter failure, like, especially with these people that are like, oh my God, I'm like running on like 3 hours of sleep because I do like these 43. That's not cute. Like go to bed.
It's not.
Go to
not
bed.
Healthy.
Right. So then going from there, walk me through once you kind of like started to embrace that training and that coaching, how that helped you to pivot into the next steps.
Yeah. So all of my burnout happened. It was kind of descending into the hypomania. And that was the beginning of 2024. And everything shut down in my business in June of 2024. So I took 6 months off, worked with the embodiment coach for 3 months. And then I worked with another coach for 6 months, the one who did human design and encouraged me to play and be human. So once I finally was able to focus on being me and what does Christi like?
Mm-hmm.
How do I want to show up in the world? How can I take care of me? Then I was able to think, oh, this is how I want to help people in their businesses. And I really made it my number one goal in 2025 at this point that I was going to be well, that I was going to take care of myself first. And so instead of my business coming first, now I come first. So I completely restructured my schedule, which was huge for me. That was number one. Because sleep is so important to me, because I know what happens when I don't sleep, I set a lot of boundaries in my schedule, specifically being I am not going to take meetings before 11 a.m. Because I found that when I would have meetings, even at 10, I would be stressed that I wasn't going to wake up in time and I would stay up during the night because I'm stressed that I'm not going to wake up in time. So I had to do a little bit of trial and error to experiment with my schedule to find that, okay, 11 a.m. is my preferred time to actually start taking meetings and have responsibilities on my plate. Whereas before I would have been like, oh, what time do you have free? Oh, 8 a.m.? Okay, sure. No. Yeah. So I had to make sure that I was going to put myself first and that my schedule would be what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was number one, was my schedule, because then that allowed me to have the time to take care of myself. The other thing was implementing self-care routines. And I
Yeah.
don't mean bubble
Yeah.
baths. I don't
No.
mean, spa days. I mean like meals and exercise, like caring for your physical body. So I needed to make sure that I had time to eat lunch, to eat dinner,
Mm-hmm.
to go on walks, to go to the gym. And when you think about all the time that it actually requires to do all those things, you're not really left with a whole lot of time to run your business.
Mm-hmm.
But going into 2025, that was my priority, was my own well-being.
Right.
So that was number one. Number two then was, okay, I need to find a new way to manage tasks than what I was doing before.
Mm-hmm.
What I was doing before was all based on urgency. It was all based on, this fire pops up, I'm going to handle that. This fire pops up, I'm going to handle that. I have this deadline, I'm going to work on that. But instead, I started implementing a more intuitive way to manage tasks. And I learned this from a coach that I worked with back in 2023. The way that I manage tasks now is I do a brain dump at the beginning of the week, pen to paper.
Mhm.
It's not on Airtable or Trello or Asana. Like, it's pen to paper. I write it all down. That's especially helpful for me as a neurodivergent person, because I can get easily distracted. But when I write it down, I'm way more able to function, and I'm way more able to follow what I need to do for the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am a planner. Obviously, I'm on the go too much to have a paper planner now. So like I live and die by my Google Calendar, but I love a good like written down to-do list, and just crossing it off gives me that rush of serotonin. And to kind of go back a little bit, like that's the thing. We're all taught that we should be like 9 to 5. And especially for neurodivergent people, it's going to be later in the day, more likely than not. I am not a morning person. I've accepted that I am not a morning person. Like between 7:45 and 8:30 is when my alarm goes off, that I feel like I'm not dead to the world, So, but it's 10:30, 11 before I'm like alive, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And if you listen to the productivity gurus, they tell you you need to have your deep work session at 5 a.m. or 7 a.m. because that's the best time to get stuff done. But like, I want your listeners to know there is no morality tied to what time you start your workday. It's fine if you need to wait until 11 a.m. to start your workday. So that's the point, is like doing what I needed to thrive, not doing what I thought was expected. And I'm the same way about Google Calendar. I have all my meetings and such on my Google Calendar. It's just easier that way. But in terms of like, how am I actually going to work on my project? It's pen to paper. And then because I have set up my business to where I actually have more space in my day, even though I just mentioned that you barely have that many hours in a day once you really think about caring for your physical needs. I know that for me to be able to do my best work, I need space in my day. I need time to work on my business. So another boundary that I put in place is I have a no meetings week at least once a month.
Yes.
And yeah, just so that I can make sure that I have the time to work on my business and do the things that I need to do and put out the projects in the world that I can be proud of, and that's going to help my client. So boundaries in my schedule. And then once I had that space in my schedule, then the way I manage tasks is more intuitively. I really go by my energy, and I look at my brain dump that I made at the beginning of the week, and I say, okay, what would feel fun to do right now? Or what would make me feel good to accomplish in this moment? Or what is it that is just nagging at me in my brain that if I get this done, I'll feel really good and things will go so much more smoothly? But I had to have the freedom and the space in my day to be able to do that. And then also like the written list, because otherwise it was just floating around in my brain, and I'm unmedicated because the medication kind of made me not well. So I need to write it down to be able to make sense of what's going on in my brain. So those are the biggest things in terms of like how I manage my energy and my tasks. And those honestly alone revolutionize the way that I show up and actually get my work done.
Yeah. No, sometimes I feel like I need almost like, because my sister and I, we share our Google calendars with each other, so that it's not like, oh, what are you doing on this day, what are you doing on this, we can just see it. Sometimes I feel like I want to take my task list that's on my Google calendar and like make it so she can see it, but then do I really want to deal with her being like, that's been pending for like 4 days? And the answer is no. No, I don't. Like, just let me move it around and like, get it done in like 3 weeks and panic about it and get it done in 5 minutes. And did I learn anything? No. But, I also feel like, especially like what you were saying, I have to look at things and go, okay, what do I want to do the least right now? Because if I do it, then it's like, like I could get nothing else done, but hey, I did the thing I didn't want to do, so I don't have to think about it anymore. And it's super fun.
It is fun because it's like a little challenge for yourself to be like, how can I make myself the most proud of me? And how can I also kind of rebel against my brain that's like, you don't want to do this, but actually I can.
Exactly. So what is your schedule kind of like? We talked about like boundaries in your schedule and stuff, but like what is kind of your day-to-day that you're implementing to make sure that you're avoiding burnout, and or like if you feel it coming on, what are you doing in order to avoid a 2.0?
Yeah, that is a great question. So as a neurodivergent person, I actually rebel against structure.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't like having a structure.
See, I thrive on a routine and a structure. I really do. It's so funny how that all varies out.
Yeah, well, my brain doesn't want to do it, but like I actually really need it to keep me on track. Because if I don't have structure, then I'm gonna do nothing and I'm gonna just feel like a potato all day. So I actually need structure, but my brain wants to rebel against it. So I like to have a flexible structure or a menu, if you will. Because then if it's a menu and I can pick what I want to do, that gets my dopamine working. And that is number one most important for a person with ADHD is dopamine. Like it's got to be fun. So instead of having, well, every day I do this, this, and this, it's that every day I have pillars, and within those pillars, I can choose what I want to do. So every single day, I care for my physical needs. That's number one. Number two, I have some type of movement in my day. It doesn't have to be first thing in the morning. It doesn't have to be in the evening to wind down. It's just at some point during the day, I have movement. And it doesn't matter what kind of movement, some kind of movement. I can play Beat Saber on my Oculus. I can walk around my block. I can go to the gym. I can go swim. I can dance to my favorite band. It doesn't matter. Just some type of movement. And then thirdly, it is some way to ground myself into my purpose and regulate myself. So grounding and regulating is the third thing. And I pull from any number of tools. Whatever feels the most fun to me in that moment is what I will do. So some days I'll do a tarot reading. Some days I will walk around the block again, like I said. Other days I will actually do some journaling. Other days I will do a meditation. Other days I will do a visualization to tap into like my future and what I want to achieve as a business owner.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like for now day to day is I make sure I have those three pieces. And then in terms of getting stuff done, I also have three things. 3 is my favorite number. I think it's the prettiest number. And it also makes our brains really happy to do things in 3.
It does.
So it does. So I have the 3 pillars of like my well-being, which are movement, caring for my physical needs, and also the third one is grounding. And then there are 3 things that I do in terms of work. So like my actual work. I'm going to take care of myself. That's in both places.
Right.
Because it's that important.
Exactly.
I'm going to take care of my clients and I'm going to sell my services. Because to me, selling my services is moving the needle forward and ensuring that I'm going to have money. And it's flexible. take care of myself doesn't have taking care of myself means listening to what I need, listening to my energy. What am I feeling? How can I take care of myself today? Sometimes I'm like, go, 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 go. The energy is flowing. I'm in flow. I'm moving. I'm doing lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm in my luteal phase of my cycle and I need a nap and a snack.
And a good cry.
And a good cry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's taking care of myself. So, and then taking care of my clients, I always make sure that they're cared for, but they come after me. I come first. Then the third thing is selling my services. That can look like any number of things. I can make a post on Instagram. I can make a reel. I can make a story. I can write a blog. I can send an email. I can have a DM conversation with someone. Just one way that I'm going to tell someone else about my offers and bring them into my business. So those are the things that I do consistently every day. And then you also asked me, what am I doing to make sure that I don't have burnout 2.0? Again, it all comes back to self-care and just consistently enforcing my boundaries on my schedule so that I have the space to be able to ask myself, what do I need in this moment? And when I get a little bit wonky, a little bit dysregulated, then I ask myself, okay, what am I feeling? What do I need? Sometimes it's removing something on my calendar that is for 2 days from now that I just don't have the mental energy for. Sometimes it is making another no meetings week in the month. Like I have that flexibility if I want to. Sometimes it is like it's telling my friend, hey, I can't hang out with you today. I really need a self-care day. So it's making sure that I have that space to be able to move through my day with less urgency and more intention and the ability to pause and say, what do I need? How am I feeling?
Right.
So that I don't get into burnout 2.0. And it's utilizing all the tools that I have at my disposal for nervous system regulation and tapping into my highest self, my grounding, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. Got kind of a semi-deep question, but what would you say to 2024 Christi?
My word. I would tell her that you are successful in the future, because I think that my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to be successful anymore. My biggest fear was that I was just going to be a business failure and that's all I'm known for, that I would never be a business owner again, that I would never be making money again. And I would tell her, hey, it does get better. You are okay. Because I just didn't believe that was possible. I was, like I said, I was struggling to get out of bed and brush my teeth. I didn't think there was a version where I'm sitting here talking to you on this podcast, a version of me like that was possible. So I would just tell her it's possible.
What's the one thing you would tell somebody that is dealing with burnout right now?
Ask for help, because you are not meant to carry everything that you're carrying. And it doesn't make you a failure or a bad person if you need help.
Exactly.
It makes you human.
Yeah. And bonus points if you have a circle that can actually handle that.
Mm-hmm. If you don't have someone who can help you out, get a therapist.
Yep. That's a big one.
If you don't have a therapist or you don't have the money for a therapy, write out your thoughts in your journal.
Yep.
You know, like that can really go a long
It
way.
really
And
can.
also, I would encourage someone to take the steps to be vulnerable with another person. So often we keep our problems to ourselves because we're afraid of looking silly or needy or stupid or whatever. But I've seen this over and over and over. When I say, I'm struggling with this, and the other person often says, oh my gosh, me too. I thought I was the only one. So take that step to be vulnerable with another person, so then you can develop that relationship to be able to ask for help.
Yeah, exactly. Christi, where can we find you?
I hang out the most on Instagram. You can find me at Christi Johnson Creative, and Christi is spelled with an I. And also you can go to my website, christijohnsоncreative.com, and you can listen to me every Wednesday for episodes of Dream Biz Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
Beautiful. Well, Christi, thank you so much for coming on, being vulnerable, talking about all the things. Like, hopefully this resonated with a person or two.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right, guys, we will catch you next week. And as always, stay hot, stay messy.